and outrage as companies and small businesses fear huge job losses, even as President William Ruto defends the controversial law. South African authorities are recruiting traditional healers in an attempt to tackle the stigma and reluctance of people to test for HIV. And meet South Africa's first black woman to lead and own an all-black orchestra. Watch World of Africa at these times, only on WION. World is One.
Hello and welcome, I'm Ananya Dutt and I'm back with another edition of Race to Power. Here's what's coming up in the next 30 minutes. In France, two young men are redefining politics. Emmanuel Macron's frontman, Gabriel Attal, and Marine Le Pen's cleanse the image man, Jordan Bardella. Are they making a difference to the French voters is the question. We ask ahead of snap polls. You don't need another opinion poll to tell you that the Tories are staring at a defeat in the upcoming elections. New polls are predicting how big this defeat will be. Some say 3/4 of the present cabinet are set to lose. "10 days from now, France will hold snap elections. Voters don't have enough time to prepare. The election office is working against time and the politicians are hard at work, especially two young men. 35-year-old Prime Minister Gabriel Attal and the 28-year-old far-right poster boy Jordan Bardella. They're giving French politics a new face, in many ways redefining how voters see the centre and the far-right parties. Let's take it one by one. Gabriel Attal has been on the job for only 6 months. He took office this January, remember. He's not just the youngest Prime Minister of France, he's also the first openly gay leader to hold the office. His little experience is compensated by his huge clout. It comes as a breather for centrist voters who are not too happy with Emmanuel Macron. Macron has been the president for about 7 years. When he took charge, it was with hopes that he would come through as a reformist. Macron pushed for economic liberalism, defense spending and social changes. But with a war in Europe, immigration on the rise and protesters on the streets, his centrist alliance got a bad name, which is where Gabriel Attal stepped in. He's giving people what they want.
Concretely, the electricity bill for all households will fall by 15% from this winter. This is thanks to the reform of the European electricity market, a reform opposed by the New Popular Ecological and Social Union and the National Rally.
Anger against Macron seemed to be the perfect ground for the far right to prosper. For long, the National Rally was seen as a party that was out of touch with reality. Its leaders justified the Holocaust and were openly Islamophobic. Marine Le Pen has worked hard to soften her and the party's image. But nobody does the job better than a young model with 1 million TikTok followers. Jordan Bardella has carefully crafted his image, and that is accessible and relatable. This year's EU Parliament's elections was the first time France's far right understood that their strategy was working. Opinion polls in France show the far-right parties leading. Bardella is already asking the voters to choose him over Attal.
The difference between Gabriel Attal and myself is that I don't plan to be the associate of the president. And the French are perfectly aware that if tomorrow I am appointed to the office of the Prime Minister as a part of a cohabitation with a relative majority, I cannot act.
Looking at the bigger picture, these young men have brought young voters to the conversation table. Both Attal and Bardella have used their social media platforms to speak directly to the youth. How many young voters they will be able to convert, now that remains to be seen. The election will take place in 2 rounds, one on June 30th and the other on July 7th. The next government will take over in July itself. In the face of opinion polls suggesting a win for the far right in France, Emmanuel Macron is urging the voters not to choose the extremes, the left or the right. But while slamming them, he might have taken it too far. While talking about the left-wing coalition's manifesto, he said, and I'm quoting, "With the extreme left, it's 4 times worse. There is no more secularity. They will go back on the immigration law, and there are things that are completely farcical, like changing your gender at the town hall." The last bit in that statement has raised some eyebrows. The left-wing coalition's program includes a proposal allowing the change of civil status in a town hall. They say changing gender would be possible by filing a request at the town hall. There was expected flack from the left, but Macron's remarks angered some of his own party members. One of them said on social media, "For people trans, for people LGBTQ+, for everyone, we must reject all stigmatization in political discourse and advance rights." Under the current system, requests to change the gender indicated in legal documents must be made before a judge in France. While there is no obligation of having received gender-affirming surgery, one must prove that the sex indicated on your civil status does not correspond to that of your social life. Let's shift our focus to another big story. A major poll reveals big Tory leaders, about 3/4 of the present cabinet, are set to lose elections as the United Kingdom goes to polls on July 4th. According to the poll conducted by Savantha, total 21 of the 27 members of the cabinet who are contesting the general elections would be routed. The poll also predicts that the Conservatives will be left with just 53 lawmakers, just narrowly ahead of the Liberal Democrats. The prominent faces among 21 ministers set to suffer the loss in the bloodbath are James Cleverly, Grant Shapps and Penny Mordaunt. As per the poll, the results of the elections will make Rishi Sunak the first sitting Prime Minister in British history to be thrown out of the elected House of the UK Parliament. Rishi Sunak won his seat with 64% of the vote in 2019. This time around, his party is expected to get only 29% of the vote, with a swing of minus 23.5%. Penny Mordaunt, the Commons leader who represented Portsmouth North since 2010 and was the voice of the Conservatives in the 2 recent TV debates, is also likely to be defeated, with a heavy swing against her in the elections. The vote swing against veteran Grant Shapps, who served as cabinet member under 4 Tory prime ministers in the last 14 years, is not as high as Sunak and Mordaunt. But he is also set for axe in the expected Labour landslide. Tory stalwart James Cleverly is standing at the election from one of the safest seats in the Tory heartlands of Essex. But the Savantha poll suggests that he too will fall prey to votes gained by the Reform UK. Likewise, previous Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who was also tipped to run for the leadership post-election, is set to face massive vote swing against her. Meanwhile, 2 other MRP polling analyses were published on the same day, and the Tories were put on 108 MPs by YouGov and 155 by More in Common. All right, now take this story further. Research consultant Charlotte Littlewood is joining us live from London. Miss Littlewood, thank you so much for joining us here on WION. Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. I have to ask you, poll after poll, they keep suggesting that the Tories are staring at a massive defeat in the upcoming elections in the UK. I have to ask you, where did they go so wrong?
I think actually it's pretty incredible. We might be seeing the biggest win for any party since the war. There's some polls actually predicting that Labour will win by 425 seats. So that really is incredible. Now, obviously, relying on polls isn't an exact science, as you just said. There are polls saying different things, and they will do that, and they won't get it right. But they are a good indication of the climate and the feel of the people in the UK at the moment. And I think the feeling with the Conservative Party is absolute apathy and distrust. You know, the way that COVID was handled, Boris was seen to have parties during a time where we were not supposed to be moving from household to household and having large gatherings. There's been promises to tackle illegal immigration. Some have felt that has been callous and against asylum seekers, and others have felt that it was needed and they actually haven't delivered. And there have been plenty more examples of where trust has been sorely broken. And then simple things. You may think it's simple, but for a lot of people it was deeply poignant. Rishi Sunak not going and staying for the full D-Day celebrations and leaving before the veterans actually left that day. And we had veterans saying that it was a great shame on Britain and that Rishi Sunak had brought shame to the country. Things like this have really stung the Conservative Party, and we're having people voting not for the parties that they want to see in, but for any party that, as the slogan is going, will get the Tories out.
Right. Ms. Littlewood, I feel like the more we come closer to the elections, and especially after, the conversation is going to shift from the Tories to the Labour. Now, the opinion polls do suggest that the Labour is going to make a massive comeback. But what are some of the immediate challenges the Labour is going to face? And how optimistic are you that they are going to deliver?
So the Labour Party will have to come to reality very quickly. It has been in a situation in which it's fallen foul to identity politics and religious communal persuasions for certain vote blocks that Labour relies on. Now, this does not run true with what Labour will need to do for trade, for commerce, for national security. There will be real conflicts of interest. And as a leader of the country, it will have to lead effectively, safely, and do the right thing for the country and for everyone in the country, not just for certain blocks that it might rely on for votes. So it will not be able to behave in some of the ways it has to get these votes if it comes into power. And I trust that it won't. It would be an impossibility. But there are obviously worrying patterns with Labour. We saw in the Corbyn era, which is not now, Keir Starmer is not the Corbyn era, but in the Corbyn era we saw Jeremy Corbyn getting involved with issues around Kashmir, for example, that saw a 30% drop in support for the Labour Party from British Indians. We've seen members of the Labour Party supporting pro-Khalistan and sentiments and Islamists as well.
All right, some exciting times, also interesting times for the UK. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Littlewood, and getting us all those insights from London. Staying on the story, the Bank of England holds steady on interest rates, keeping them at a 16-year high of 5.25%. This decision comes despite inflation falling to the bank's 2% target for the first time since October 2021. This also signifies the Bank of England's stance to remain on the sidelines until the July 4th elections.
Core inflation has fallen. Food inflation is now less than 2%. For families worried about the cost of living, today is very, very good news. And just a year and a half ago, we had higher inflation than nearly anywhere in the G7. Now it is lower than nearly any other major economy. That shows that the difficult decisions we've taken have paid off.
Now, this decision hurts Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, whose Conservative Party faces an uphill battle in the upcoming July 4th election. While Sunak credits his policies for the drop in inflation, Labour blames the high mortgage rates on previous Conservative leadership. The Bank of England's decision to hold rates reflects ongoing concerns about inflation persistence. Although headline inflation has reached the target, services inflation remains higher than expected at 5.7%. Additionally, private sector wage growth is outpacing the bank's estimates for compatibility with their inflation target. With the Bank of England not pivoting to policy easing, inflation control is still in doubt. Now, these factors, combined with the potential for past energy price drops to fall out of inflation data later this year, suggest that the bank is cautious about prematurely cutting rates. The minutes from today's meeting reveal a finely balanced debate among policymakers, with some placing less weight on recent high service inflation figures. Financial markets are now looking towards September or even November for a potential rate cut by the Bank of England. Now, this aligns with a Reuters poll from last week, where most economists predicted a reduction after the bank's next policy decision in August. However, the upcoming election adds a layer of complexity. The bank has emphasized the decision is independent, but the outcome could significantly impact Britain's politics.
Get going with
All right, news just coming in from New Delhi. Massive relief for Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal. A Delhi court has granted bail to the Aam Aadmi Party chief in the alleged liquor policy scam. Kejriwal was arrested by the Enforcement Directorate on accusations of money laundering on March 21st. In May, he was granted interim bail by the Supreme Court till June 1st in view of general elections. Then he surrendered on June 2nd. And to tell us the latest, we are being joined by our correspondent Dharamjot Kaur. She is joining us live on the phone line. Dharamjot, good to have you. What is the latest you can tell us from New Delhi?
Well, Ananya, the case has been in court for the past 2 days in terms of the latest hearing, where Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's team has been trying to get bail for the Aam Aadmi Party chief. And after 2 days of, hearing the case and then the order being reserved earlier today, the Rajavani court has finally decided to grant bail to the chief minister on, a surety bond of rupees 1 lakh. So it's a massive, massive relief for Arvind Kejriwal and also for the Aam Aadmi Party. It's been, a tough few months for the party and for the chief minister as well. We saw him being arrested in March, and then the Enforcement Directorate following up on a case related to allegations in a liquor policy scam and several accusations made against Kejriwal. We heard earlier the ED calling him, a kingpin and one of the key conspirators in this particular case. And how the case, the case has proceeded in not just the Delhi High Court or a special court, but also in the Supreme Court, which had granted Kejriwal bail earlier to campaign for his party during the Lok Sabha elections. But on and off, Kejriwal has spent over 65 to 70 days in custody now. So it definitely cause for celebration for Kejriwal and for the party as well, Ananya.
All right, Dharamjot, thank you so much for getting us the latest and up to speed with that case. Let's shift focus now. With less than 5 months to go for the US presidential elections, a recent poll survey has found about 20% of voters undecided about the choice of their candidate. The survey says the voters are either mulling third-party options or are likely not to vote at all for the November 5th presidential elections. The poll suggests the undecided voters will be closely watching the first presidential debate to see how Biden and Trump, the two oldest ever candidates in a presidential race, will think on their feet during their debate on June 27th. 60% of undecided voters previously voted for Biden, but this time around they have partially or fully soured on him. Meanwhile, 40% voters are upset with Trump, but they do not consider Biden as an alternative. Let's take a look at the key poll issues in the US presidential polls. According to the latest poll, mental fitness, especially Biden's, is a key issue for the undecided voters. Biden's Stewardship of the economy and his handling of inflation is also a hot topic this time. Remember, the increase in consumer prices has been a sticking point for the voters with the rise in inflation. Immigration policies is another key poll issue, and with several voters who supported Biden in 2020 wanting him to address immigration during the debate, Biden vowed to reverse many of Trump's restrictive border policies when he took office in 2021. But Biden has struggled with record numbers of migrants caught illegally crossing the US-Mexico border on his watch. Trump's felony conviction in May is a factor for voters as well, who are unhappy with Biden and believe conviction disqualifies Trump. Tracking another important story coming in from West Asia, the split in Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet has widened. The Prime Minister has accused Ben-Gvir of leaking state secrets after the far-right leader demanded a spot in the now defunct war cabinet. The ruling Littlewood party accused Ben-Gvir, who is a member of the security cabinet but not the war cabinet, of leaking state secrets after several reports emerged that Benjamin Netanyahu had offered Ben-Gvir sensitive security briefings in exchange of his support of the bill regulating the municipal rabbis. The Littlewood said in a statement that the reports of the alleged offer were full of inaccuracies, and they say that the Prime Minister told Ben-Gvir that whosoever wants to be part of the security consultation team will have to prove that they are not leaking state secrets or private conversations. In return, Ben-Gvir has attacked the ruling party, suggesting it was the Prime Minister who had been leaking information from meetings. Ben-Gvir says that Benjamin Netanyahu himself pulled the rabbi bill from the Knesset agenda after realizing he wasn't getting enough votes to advance the bill. Moreover, the National Unity Party has also slammed the Prime Minister. They say if Benjamin Netanyahu believes that there is a minister leaking state secrets, then they should not give the minister control over the Israeli police and a membership in the cabinet. Let's now look at some election-related stories around the world. Outgoing Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte has clinched the race to become the next head of NATO at a pivotal time for the alliance. This after sole challenger Romanian President Klaus Iohannis pulled out. The veteran politician is expected to be formally named by NATO's 32 nations in the coming days and should take over when current chief Jens Stoltenberg's term ends on October 1st. Mexico's president-elect Claudia Sheinbaum has promised tougher measures to fight extortion during an event with business leaders in Mexico City. Remember, powerful cartels control swathes of Mexico and are involved not just in drug trafficking, but other crimes including human trafficking, extortion and fuel theft. Iranian presidential candidate Mohammad Baghir Ghalibaf holds election rally for female supporters in the Iranian capital of Tehran ahead of the presidential vote on June 28th. Originally slated for 2025, the election was preponed after Ibrahim Raisi unfortunately lost his life on May 19th in a helicopter crash in northern Iran. And with that, we are wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me, Ananya Datta.
Proposed tax hikes in Kenya's Finance Bill 2024 causes concerns and outrage as companies and small businesses fear huge job losses, even as President William Ruto defends the controversial law. South African authorities are recruiting traditional healers in an attempt to tackle the stigma and reluctance of people to test for HIV. And meet South Africa's first black woman to lead and own an all-black orchestra. Watch World of Africa at these times, only on WION. World is One.
Namaste. Hello friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
As Taylor Swift takes over the world, we explain the number game of the Eras Tour. Know how sequels, remakes and reboots have become the flavor of the season. And find out some rare facts about My Heart Will Go On singer Celine Dion. All this and much more with me, Isha Hanspal, at these times only on WION eClub.
This week on the West Asia Post, tensions flare up between Lebanon's Hezbollah group and Israeli forces. Is a full-blown war on the horizon? The IDF is facing the heat for having prior intelligence about Hamas's October 7 attack. All this as protests and political turmoil once again surround the Israeli Prime Minister. Is Netanyahu only watching out for his political future? Also on the show, pilgrims on Hajj from all over the world face the brunt of a global heatwave. Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, this Friday at these times, only on WION. World is One.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players. Right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at WION.com.
Hello and welcome. You're watching WION Fine Print with me, Ananya Datta. Let's get started with the headlines. In his first visit to Jammu and Kashmir, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi reacts on recent terror attacks, says his government will not hesitate to teach a lesson to the enemies. Delhi court grants bail to Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in the money laundering case related to the excise policy case. AAP leader can walk out of Tihar jail after paying a bail bond of Rs 1 lakh. Hezbollah says it has fired dozens of rockets into northern Israel in retaliation for deadly strike in South Lebanon. A day after, group leader warns no place in Israel will be spared in case of an all-out war. Day after IDF says Hamas cannot be eliminated, Netanyahu government vows to systematically take apart Hamas. Says the Gaza offensive will not stop till it is done. Three killed and 4 injured in Russian attacks on a village in Ukraine's Donetsk region. Russian troops used Smerch system to launch cluster munitions damaging households, cars and gas pipelines. World leaders, health groups and pharmaceutical firms announced $1.2 billion in funding at a summit to produce vaccines in Africa, which is facing numerous health crises, including rising cholera outbreaks. Two-time Tour de France winner Jonas Vingegaard will defend his title at cycling's most prestigious road race. The Dane broke his collarbone and ribs and also suffered a collapsed lung following a crash in April. And lastly, just a day after Justin Timberlake's arrest, now another Hollywood